Well, for his thoughts on the recommendations being made by the AG, we're now joined by retired General Tom Lawson. From 2012 to 2015, he served as Canada's Chief of Defence Staff. General Lawson, good to see you again. Thank you for being here.
Pleasure, Michael.
Listen, I want to begin with recruitment because in his response to the AG report, the Defence Minister says that in the period from April 2024 to March 2025, Canadian Armed Forces actually surpassed its recruitment goals by about 200 new recruits. I'm wondering, are you encouraged by that number, or are you still concerned about the shortage of recruits in the years that preceded the last fiscal?
No, certainly encouraged by those numbers. Unfortunately, we built quite a deficit, a shortage of about 6,000 regulars and 6,000 reservists. But this is the first year in the last few since COVID where we're going to grow the numbers of people in uniform instead of getting smaller.
Yeah, grow, as you say, the expectation. The Auditor General does, though, raise a concern about staffing levels, stating that as of June 30, 2024, 13% of occupations in the Canadian Armed Forces were at risk of not reaching authorized staffing levels. Now, this includes signal and line technicians, combat engineers, pilots. Operationally, what impact would that have if staffing levels fall below authorized expectations?
Well, they have been below authorized expectations for quite some number of years now, and the effect is very harsh. A lot of responsibilities fall to those other people who have remained in uniform, and it doubles up their duties. With people come hope, and with a shortage of people becomes a lot more despair. But I think that we're kind of on the right track now. Everybody, all of our partners in NATO and friendly nations around the world got kicked during COVID with the pandemic shutting down all the schoolhouses, all of the training facilities, and so everybody got shorter. We lost all of those people who were leaving at the end of their terms, retiring, but nobody was coming in because there was nowhere to train them. So that's how we fell into this huge debt, and now we have to dig our way out. And there are some positive steps being taken both by the military and by the government to address these things.
And when you say positive steps, what do you look to?
Well, first, the military has been seized with this for years. If I were in uniform right now reading the Auditor General's report, I'd say, tell me something I don't know. But the fact is, it's always a good thing when the Auditor General brings heat and light to something as important as this. And the military has been doing some really creative things, like allowing landed immigrants to speed up their path to citizenship by joining the forces, and extended probationary periods that allow people to start their training even though their security clearances aren't complete. Things like that, and portals online so people have a lot of control over medical appointments and interview appointments, things that weren't in place even 10 years ago. And on top of that, the government just put a lot of focus on compensations and benefits, and those raises are going to come to bear with more people being interested in making this a career, I think.
And to that, the Carney government did increase salaries, 20% increase alone for privates in the regular force. But there still remains a question about housing, General. Questions about how well D&D understands the challenge, the targets to get housing built, because they still fall short of what's actually needed. How important is that line item for recruitment and retention?
Well, I'd say 10 or 15 years ago, it wasn't that important. And the reason I smile is because the armed forces well understand that housing for the last 5 to 10 years has been really, really important because of the price of housing in Canada. Back 15 or 20 years ago, we were moving as a military in a different direction, where you were encouraged to move onto the economy, to buy a home and start building some equity. 40 or 50 years ago, everyone was in married quarters or barracks if you were single. And we started to move away from that. I think there was a lot of support for that. And I think the rationale was strong. But then when housing markets in many of the places where our bases are situated started going crazy, it became very difficult to look after your own housing on salaries provided by the military. Now, we have some models from good friends like the Americans or the Australians, in which what they do is they provide a very generous housing allowance. So if you move from somewhere that's not too expensive to somewhere that's far more expensive, like Toronto or Victoria, you get a very generous housing allowance. That's where the Department of National Defense fell down. So we're kind of moving back to where we were 40 or 50 years ago, and there's discussion that we need about 7,000 more houses built for people in uniform. And now, with a lot more money being invested in the military, I think what's going to happen is the Canadian Forces Housing Authority are going to get up on their high horse and accelerate this whole construction process.
So that said, General, and I quickly running time, but I want to ask, what do you hope the minister and D&D take away from this AG report?
Well, you read the minister's response today, and it's very positive. What he says is to the Auditor General, thank you very much for highlighting these things, and we agree with you. I think what he's saying is that we in the ministry, the politicians, and the Department of National Defense, Canadian Armed Forces, are all seized with these things. And the Auditor General does say that, look, we're understanding that you've taken a bunch of steps, especially on recruiting, that we simply did not have time to look at. So those things have not come to bear. And I think the Auditor General and her team is probably going to have a follow-up look at this in a year or two. And I think what they're going to find is some of these things have eased a little bit. But as the Chief of Defense says, to fulfill that or to fill up that debt of personnel, it's going to take till at least 2030. And that's a very important thing for Canadians to know.
Well, we keep our eye on that prize. General Tom Lawson, always appreciate the time. Thank you very much.
Pleasure, Michael. Thank you.